51 years ago last month, the Apollo 13 space mission was happening. And most of you are familiar with it either from being old enough to actually remember it and watch the news from back then, or from watching the docudrama Apollo 13 more recently released. And one spoken line from that real life problem and from the film has kind of become a part of our cultural lexicon. And as you probably know, during the mission in space, the astronauts encountered these major issues. They were doing some routine maintenance and something went wrong. And the flight commander needed to report back to home base, back to the space station in Houston, to mission control on Earth, that there was an issue they were dealing with, because the NASA people were watching every detail on their computers, and they noticed something dramatic and dangerous had occurred. And the command module pilot's name was Jack Swigert, and he's the one who said the famous words, "Houston, we have had a problem." So the Apollo 13 crew and NASA itself had to overcome some pretty serious issues and obstacles in order for them to get back home. And first they had to improvise and construct a carbon dioxide filter out of things that they just had up there. And second, they had to operate and return their spacecraft to Earth actually with very little electrical power. And since the entire country was watching, because this was a big deal back then, if you're old enough to have been able to see it, you probably watched when they splashed down into the ocean on April 18th. So in the movie of the story, the director said he felt like shortening the famous line would be more dramatic. So the script said, "Houston, we have a problem." All right, so Wikipedia says that phrase has become so popular, and we use it when we're ironically letting people know there's something really wrong, right? It's usually a vast understatement. But everyone understands. Everyone understands when you say, "Houston, we have a problem," right? So when we were growing up, my brothers and I, we always ask each other very sarcastically, "What is your problem? What's your problem?" Right? Do you ever use that phrase? What is your problem? I say it sometimes, especially when I'm just going down the road, kind of hody-do-do, just minding my own business, and someone does something extremely unexpected. I'm like, "Hey, what is your problem?" It's really a rhetorical question. I don't think I really want an answer, obviously. Their problem is obviously that they don't know how to drive in that moment, or maybe the car lost its turn signal or something happened, right? But what if it was a real question? What if it was a real question? What is your problem? Think about that for a second. What is your problem? If someone asked you right now, could you answer that question? Could you say what your problem is? My talk title today is No Problem. And I use that title because my lesson today is to challenge us all to look at troubling situations differently. What if we literally considered ourselves to have no problems? Because if we believe that everything is made up of God energy, or we say that it's all God, so it's all good, what real problems are there anyway? I'm not talking about walking through life with spiritual bypass, just sticking your head in the sand and pretending that there are no challenges going on. Not, being falsely positive is not helpful when inside ourselves there's something really breaking in there. I'm talking about finding a way to look at everything that's going on as having a spiritual and holy purpose. There's a reason everything's happening, and therefore there is a spiritual outcome that is inevitable. So let's look first at the definition of the word problem. Webster says, "A problem is a matter or situation regarded as unwelcome or harmful and needing to be dealt with and overcome." Now there are several other definitions, but if we take this definition as the one we're working with, what do you consider a problem in your world? What situation are you regarding as unwelcome or harmful and something you need to deal with, right? Because we all have situations that we need to deal with. But is our relationship with them about solving them or pretending they're not there? What is your relationship with those things? If we're considering them unwelcome and harmful, we've already decided that these situations kind of landed in our lives against our will, and they're causing us pain in some way. But is that really the truth? And if we've made that decision to call them unwelcome and harmful, we have the power to make a different decision. If that's our thought, we can change our thought. That's what I mean by having no problem. Once we understand the power that we have in our minds and in our choices, problems become what? Opportunities. Opportunities to grow. Opportunities to see things differently. So the astronauts that I was talking about, they actually really had a classic problem, right? They had something they needed to use their minds and their logic to solve, like a puzzle. Like their life depended on it, actually, because it did depend on them. But in our daily lives, that's not usually the case. We're not really usually trying to solve a problem like a puzzle. Many things that we consider problems have to do with our having decided that something out there is weird or different or unrelatable or even wrong. You know, some of our typical problems have the element of another person doing something or making a choice that we don't understand, like the driver I was talking about, or doing something that messes up our carefully laid out plans and how things should go. And other problems come about because we've misused one of the laws that governs life, including our lives. So this past week in class, we discussed how we unintentionally misuse the laws and we co-create things we don't really desire. Situations unfold because we've not been in alignment with the natural flow of energy in life. You know, perhaps we've been withholding or hoarding that energy that is meant to be flowing in your world. Or perhaps we've been producing these thoughts or ideas and beliefs that attract these unwanted situations because like attracts like. We learned about that Wednesday night. And perhaps we've not forgiven something and we're holding this negative energy that continues to create situations that we no longer want, that show us whatever energy we're holding. So never ever forget that this philosophy is built on the principle that we are divine beings, right? So our true nature, what's really, really inside of us, is that spiritual wholeness within us. It's always there. Our intelligence that we use every day accesses divine intelligence or universal mind. We're each made up of pure spirit. And each of us has within us this seed of perfection. So we have the greatest problem-solving ability that there is. And when we stand in that knowing, that identity, we access unlimited resources that are always available to us no matter what we might be facing. So what we do is we strive to release suffering by remembering our true nature. Michael Beckwith, the very famous New Thought minister from Agape in Los Angeles, he calls that remembering God awareness, and he writes this: in God awareness, problems dissolve because there are no real problems in the mind of God. There are only perfect patterns of existence and divine ideas. So what he's saying is when we become aware of the God in everything, those problems seem to dissolve because Spirit only knows that perfect pattern that's underneath there. So when we consider or think about any problems we have, don't limit God. God is infinite. Therefore, resources are infinite. Energy is infinite. If lack of anything, including gasoline, is part of your perceived challenge, get a bigger expectation of the infinite. Expand your mind to accept the truth that God is limitlessness. And therefore, think of that of yourself, because When we begin to see ourselves bigger inside of ourselves, our identity becomes bigger, our outer lives reflect greater spaciousness, greater resources, things out there look more substantial. Because when we grow, our lives grow. And that growth can be infinite in possibility. Ernest Holmes says it this way. He says, our belief sets the limit to our demonstration of a principle which, of itself, is without limit. It is ready to fill everything because it is infinite. It is entirely a question of our own receptivity. So don't limit any situation to fit into what you understand as possible. What you consider a miracle is just a solution that is entirely possible, just not in the realm of reality that you're in. Everything that happens is a normal experience because it happens. Open yourself up to a miraculous situation, miraculous solution to the situation you're in. I was talking to a person here in the sanctuary a few weeks ago, and he had sent me an email. He wanted to discuss something he considered a problem. But before we could even have a conversation about it, it resolved itself completely in an unexpected way. And the situation got cleared up without any effort on his part. I was trying to explain to him that by merely asking for a solution out loud to someone else, by speaking his word that he desired the problem to be gone, he stepped into the divine flow and the energy around that situation cleared. And we were both just delighted that we didn't even have to talk about it, right? So don't limit what is possible, and don't expect that all solutions have to come through your own hard work. That's what I mean by not limiting the divine. I will often pray when someone's asking for something, are you open to knowing a miraculous conclusion to this situation? And when they say yes, then you just never know what can happen. So when you're considering a problem that you have, face that underlying fear that's under there. Face it head on. If you're perceiving something as a problem, there's definitely some kind of fear involved. Perhaps you fear that you don't have what it takes to get this accomplished or to take care of the situation. Or maybe it's an uncomfortable conversation that needs to occur, and you're afraid you don't have that kind of courage or can't find the words to say what you need to say. Or maybe you've never done something that this situation is calling forth from you. Or maybe a change is necessary that you're just a little bit reluctant to make. But remember every day, the God within you is bigger than any of that. And this situation is inviting you to grow and know a bigger idea of God. Name the thing and face it. Get curious about it. Find someone who's done that very thing before and have them help you understand what's possible, how they faced it, how they conquered their own fear about the very thing you're holding on to. Because fear blocks solutions from flowing towards you. Think about when you're afraid, you put up a wall. That's an energetic wall too. And then solutions can't come in. You have heard the saying, the truth sets you free, right? One step towards resolution is talking about what is going on, not with someone at your level that's just going to commiserate with you, but talking about it with someone who might have a bigger answer than you do, right? Because so often our problems are what cause us to isolate ourselves in society. We withdraw because we're confused, or we pull back to avoid conflict, or we hide so others won't judge us. Oh, this is not working right, I've got to hide. We feel alienated from others because of something we've allowed to falsely separate ourselves. Somehow we feel different, right? You know, in our book of the month, Brene Brown, Braving the Wilderness is the book. She talks a lot about this word belonging. And so many of our perceived problems are based in the belief that we somehow don't belong. Everybody else belongs, but we don't. And she points out that in our culture right now, we've sorted ourselves out into like-minded groups. And when we do that, we only receive information that keeps us in the group we're in. We block out everything else. But many of our challenging situations might be resolved more easily if we weren't so isolated into all the groups that think like we do, right? Spirit helps us in our situations by giving us ideas. God is an idea energy. Ideas come from all sources and often from unexpected ones. But if we're surrounding ourselves with the same people every day in the same settings, doing the same things, we might not recognize a new idea when it walks across our road. It just looks so unfamiliar. I've never done it that way. But expanding our world will expose us to new thoughts and new creative solutions to things, and ideas flow through people. So get engaged with many different kinds of people and listen. Listen. Bring up the subject that you're thinking about and listen how other people, different than you, would address it. So let me talk about problem solving from a spiritual perspective for a second. If you're vibrating at the energy level that created the situation you no longer want, you've got to change your vibration to a higher level to draw in an improved situation. That's how it works. So the lowest emotional energy vibration is shame. That's the lowest one. And the highest is enlightenment. So the lowest emotional vibration is shame. Let's think about that for a second. So we have two choices of moving our vibration level higher. We have to, one is to release the lowest vibration energy in our field, release the shame and fear, and the other is to push our highest vibration even higher. So I often tell clients that I work with one-on-one that I imagine us to be like the old illustration of Gulliver in Gulliver's Travels. Okay, see all those little ropes, right? Those little threads that are holding him down? These little Lilliputian people, they don't have big ropes, they have little ropes. So there's lots of little ropes. And I tell my clients that my job is to help them cut those little threads, cut them, because they're holding them back. Those threads are fear and shame, and they come from the stories that we tell ourselves about our abilities and our lack of power. Because once you start cutting some of the threads and free yourself, you can actually stand up and take dominion over your life. So cutting the threads is releasing the shame vibrations and raising your energy level. And forgiveness is the solution, because letting go of the stories that create feelings of shame and unworthiness, that's letting it go. That process raises the lower energy of our vibration spectrum. And if we want to work on raising the high end of our vibration, pushing that up, that's when we turn to gratitude, right? Because being thankful for the good that we have around us is setting our energy to vibrate higher and higher. And noticing the good in our lives, that's us recognizing the solutions that surround us every day. And if we do those two things, we cut threads of shame and we push gratitude up, we'll find soon that we're not even in alignment with the situation or the problem that has us on the path of solving it. And then we must move out of our life experience as it is. See, higher consciousness has a positive effect on your life, but it also has a positive effect on the world. When you raise your vibration, you counterbalance those people who are living in lower vibrations. There's a man named David Hawkins, and he calibrates human consciousness energetically in a scientific way. Using kinesthetic testing, Hawkins created a chart to explain in detail what the mystics have always known. Love is more powerful than hate, and truth sets us free. So he said, as an example, one individual who has raised their consciousness calibration to 500, which is his number for love, counterbalances one individual here, counterbalances 750,000 people who calibrate below 200, which is the lowest possible calibration. 1 to 750,000. So don't think for a second that your positivity doesn't have an impact on the world. It does. And the message there is increase your integrity, your understanding and capacity for compassion, and change the world. I want to quote him in saying this. This is David Hawkins. In this interconnected universe, every improvement we make in our private world improves the world at large for everyone. Simple kindness to oneself and all that lives is the most powerful transformational force of all. Kindness to oneself and all that lives. If we practice that alone, many of our problems would absolutely evaporate, because way too often we think of something as a problem because it's just a person behaving differently than we choose to behave. The bottom line is, when you think you have a problem, get curious. Get curious as to the spiritual solutions available to you, and know that as you release your attachment to the problem, it will resolve, and you will be changing the vibration of the entire world. Are there really problems? I'm going to say it this way. Houston, we have no problem. Here's our one sentence affirmation. Say this loudly. I have no problems. Only situations calling forth my truth, my growth, and my kindness. You have no problems. Don't worry. Be happy. And she's going to sing about that.